Hey everybody, it's Christina Holloway here, and today we're going to talk about how to make a strong first impression. I was recently having a conversation with a friend who asked me what the biggest question is I receive from clients and potential clients, and I said this: how do I own a conversation? How do I let people know who I am right away? And how do I make a strong first impression so they know what kind of person they're dealing with? And basically, this comes down to asking, how do I own my own narrative? You don't want other people making assumptions about who they think you are, especially if you avoid sharing certain pieces of information in hopes that they just won't notice, So one example is when I work with people who will tell me, well, I'm quiet. I usually am not the first one to give feedback. I don't work well on big, high-powered meetings, and I prefer to give feedback later on, or any number of descriptors for what it means to be a deeper thinker and someone who wants to put consideration before they give feedback. And this is pretty much an example of how others can label you as you're quiet, you're shy, you don't speak up enough in meetings. This could be related back to feedback in your professional development, and you don't want it to come across that way. So, how do we make a strong first impression, particularly if there are personality markers that lend others to think they have you figured out when you haven't explained who you are? There's 3 questions that I typically ask when we want to figure out exactly who we are as we show up in high-powered or high-stakes career events where you want to make sure people know who you are immediately and they're not filling in the gaps or making these microaggressions, which is, oh, I have you all figured out, you're the quiet one who stands in the back. So we really don't want to hear it. That's the last thing I want to hear when I show up at a big networking event is, oh, you're the quiet one. Really? Typically, when I'm working with somebody, I'll ask them, the first question is, who am I? Why is this important? Well, when we first ask ourselves that question, it forces us to think in a positive manner. I know who I'm not. I can tell you I don't like to do this and I don't like to do that. I don't like to speak in front of crowds. I don't like to lead big projects or big meetings. We're more inclined to indicate to anybody who asks us, I don't like to do those things. Why? Because when it's uncomfortable, it's the first thing we notice. I don't appreciate being in that situation. That is uncomfortable for me, therefore I don't like it. And I will always remember to tell people I don't like to do that kind of thing. We'll say speaking in front of a group. That's usually very common. A lot of people don't like to speak in front of groups. So in that instance, we need to retrain the brain to understand, what do you like? And to start stepping forward and telling people, this is the kind of person I am. So when we say, who am I? My question is really related to, what do you like to do? What do you enjoy doing? How do I step forward in that reality? Instead of stepping back in that uncomfortable space, you want to step forward in your new reality, which is who you've decided to be. Okay, so in this example, say you don't like to speak in front of crowds, or you're not a public speaker, you don't like to give big presentations, you can indicate, I tend to be somebody who enjoys working in small groups. I do my best work that way. I do my best brainstorming that way. I become my most creative. Oh, you mean you don't want to run this big project where there's over 100 people and you need to give status updates every week? That's not really my gig, but if we were able to break it down so that I could speak in front of 10 people at a time or 20 people at a time, that would suit me better. Now, it isn't I prefer this and that's just the way it is. The bigger issue is, if you don't like speaking in front of crowds, again, this is just the example, it's going to cause you, it isn't just that it's uncomfortable or you veer away from it. Particularly speaking in front of large groups can be overwhelming. It can be frightening. It can stunt your creativity. You need to get used to it. You have to build up a skill in order to start feeling good doing it. It's something you need to learn how to do and learn how to appreciate. There are some people who can step right into it, and then there are others who need to take a lot longer to learn it, and there are others who just, no matter how much they work on it, they'll never feel comfortable doing it. So this is less about telling somebody, I just prefer not to do those things. I would too. I'd prefer not to do a whole bunch of stuff. but that doesn't mean I'm not going to do it, especially if it comes to, will this give you more visibility? Will this be impressive to higher ups? Will this show people what I'm capable of? I'm going to step into a little bit of uncomfortable space as long as it's something that I can navigate and it's something I can tolerate. Now, if I'm feeling overwhelmed or I get stage fright or I just panic, speaking in front of big groups will induce this. And so it's a real fear, and it's something that shouldn't be taken lightly. It should be taken seriously. So if your preference is, I'm not the kind of person who speaks in front of large crowds, you do want to be able to walk up to somebody and say, this is who I am. I am great at brainstorming and I'm great at working with small, intimate groups. I tend to do my best work in this space. Did you say you don't like to speak publicly? No, you didn't. So you avoided a whole conversation of saying, I don't like to do those types of things. And that kind of brings up a red flag for anybody who might think, oh, this isn't going to be someone who cooperates. What you did do is identify the kind of person you are, the areas where you get the most success, and the space in which you're going to navigate best. That's the first part. So that's who am I? The second part is, how will I work? Now, it is a little related because what we're explaining is, I'm not a big presentation person, but I can be somebody who maybe likes to speak in front of crowds when it's virtual, like in Zoom. I gave a lot of presentations in Zoom, and where there might have been 100 people attending, it wasn't as overwhelming for me as if 100 people were in the room with me and I felt pressure to perform or deliver, right? So I came in confident, I came in with my presentation and the outline of my material, and I was able to deliver with the feeling or the concept that maybe this was just a few people on the call versus how many might have actually attended. Now, when you're explaining how do I work, again, you're piggybacking this with, I tend to be the kind of person who appreciates working in smaller groups. I tend to be the kind of person who likes to pick up projects in the middle. There are people who like to start projects. There are people who like to drive projects forward, and there are people who like to finish projects. Understand which person you are. I'm the kind of person who likes to work best in this space. The more you're able to identify where your biggest successes are and where you have your biggest strengths, the easier it'll be for other people to, one, communicate effectively with you, and then two, understand where to put you when it comes to giving you assignments or big projects to work on or to track your successes. I am this kind of person. I work best in this type of work environment. And number three, here's what I expect of others around me. We all have expectations. We all understand how we would work best with other people. Know what kind of personality complements yours. I tend to be, I'm talking about myself, so I tend to be a visionary person who loves the brainstorming part of the beginning aspect and probably kickstarting projects or getting them underway. I am less engaged if I've been on a project for a long time and need to bring it to the finish line. What do I expect? Somebody who's very grounded and very systematic and organized who can help bring me to conclusion. I know the kind of personality types I work best with, and I know where I can pick friends or colleagues who can be on my team so that we're successful as we go along. Now that's the third point. Let me review. There's these 3 points. The first one is to ask yourself, who am I? The second is to ask, how do I work? And the third is to ask, what do I expect from others around me? Now you could also expand that third point to say, what do I expect from myself? And in that sense, you're just challenging yourself to say, how many times can I say these statements so that I start changing the narrative of the people around me? Now, for the friend of mine who was asking what the most common question is, I did have an example of a particular client. And that client said to me, I need to be able to own my narrative, which is how do I show up and how do I make sure people know what kind of person I am? She wanted to understand how to own her space and how to strengthen her presence, particularly among people she was just meeting. So this was, on the one hand, strengthening relationships with people she knew, but also on the other hand, making sure the new people that she met also were going to learn who she was immediately and knew exactly how they were going to work with her. Okay, so in summary, we have these 3 questions. This is about creating a positive first impression, and you have to answer these first 3 questions before you can go out there and practice. So understand who you are, understand how you work, and understand what you expect of the others around you, or understand what to expect of yourself as you step into this new reality. Stay away from the negatives. I don't like this, I don't like that. Lean closer into the positives. This is where I do my best work. This is where I am the most creative. And then make sure you understand who you're working with so they get the best out of you. If you have a great partnership with a colleague, ask yourself, why do you work well with that person? What strengths do they help amplify in you, and what strengths do you help amplify in them to make you a power duo or a powerful team? Okay. Well, that's it for this video on how to make a strong first impression. If you like this video, please click the like button, click the subscribe button, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss a video from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.